How lovely to see my beautiful wife's radiant smile, Derek said, raising his glass in a toast. I froze, my grin melting faster than ice on a hot summer day. Wife? Radiant? I hadn't smiled in months. I scanned the formally set dining table that I certainly hadn't helped prepare. His family surrounded us, beaming. My own kinspersons were notably absent. Not that it mattered. After all, this dinner was to celebrate Derek's latest achievement, a fancy promotion or award or something. I had stopped listening to the specifics a while ago. Derek rambled on, the perfect host entertaining his perfect guests. I stared at my plate, pushing the expertly cooked food around with my fork, my appetite gone. He gestured expansively, praising his own culinary skills. Culinary skills I never knew he had. In our year of marriage, I had never once seen that man step foot in a kitchen. I dropped my fork, the clatter muted by the embroidered tablecloth. When exactly did you learn to cook a gourmet meal? I asked pointedly. Considering all your recent business trips, I wasn't aware you had time to take cooking classes. An uncomfortable silence blanketed the table. I ignored it, focusing on Derek's reaction. Shock, then annoyance flashed across his face. He quickly schooled his features behind his trademark plastic smile. Leanna, what a sense of humor you have. His forced laugh sounded shrill and panicked to my ears. Good. You know my presentations run late, so I often have working dinners with clients. I raised a single eyebrow. And these clients also taught you to expertly fillet a sea bass? His father leapt to Derek's defense. Now, Leanna, Calvin admonished, you should be grateful for Derek's tireless work ethic. It's provided you with this lifestyle. Designer clothes, luxury vehicles, extravagant vacations. I bristled, biting back the retort poised on my tongue. My so-called lifestyle was nothing more than a gilded cage paid for with Derek's blood money, or at least the money I had assumed was his. Now doubts needled my mind. Forcing a tight smile, I turned to Derek's mother and deftly changed the subject. As she prattled on about her garden club, my thoughts roiled. When had Derek become so skilled in deception? More importantly, what else had he lied about? I needed answers. After the endless evening finally ended, I cornered Derek in our opulent living room. Hands on hips, I confronted his dishonesty. I want the truth, I demanded. No more lies or omissions. Derek's facade fully shattered, his handsome face twisting spitefully. You humiliated me tonight with your baseless accusations, he snarled. I fought to maintain my composure. Then prove me wrong, I challenged. His lips flattened into a hard, angry line. Then he turned abruptly and stalked out without another word. I watched him go, my heart cracking. In his icy silence I found all the proof I needed. My picture-perfect marriage now lay exposed as a complete sham. I had twisted myself to fit the role of perfect wife, quitting my job, relinquishing my own dreams and desires in favor of supporting Derek's ambitions. All because I believed our love to be real. That belief had rooted me when loneliness crept in, when doubt whispered insidiously that something wasn't right. No more. I refused to continue living this lie of a marriage. If Derek wouldn't give me the truth willingly, then I would just have to discover it for myself. The silence in our cavernous apartment pressed down on me, cold and heavy like a leaden shroud. I wandered listlessly between the ornate yet impersonal rooms, absently trailing one hand along the smooth marble countertops and luxury furnishings. What was once filled with promise and possibility now echoed with loss and regret in the all-consuming emptiness. I paused before the window overlooking the glittering city lights, a view that once inspired awe but now only emphasized my isolation 30 stories up in this tower of steel and glass, like a modern-day Rapunzel trapped in her own illusion of happiness. When had that illusion shattered completely? When had the emotional chasm between Derek and I become so vast? The changes had crept slowly, distance growing insidiously like black mold behind walls, invisible yet toxic. His long hours at the office stretched into weekends away at conferences, which blurred into overseas business trips. The trips came frequently now, often at a moment's notice. Emergency client meetings, Derek would claim in his smooth voice after I'd confront him about a last-minute canceled dinner or trip. His words slipped between us as insubstantial as smoke, their plausibility eroding a little more each time. Something sinister lurked behind his well-crafted excuses. I sensed it in my marrow. Derek hid a dark truth, one he desperately did not want discovered. Well, the jig was up. After that disastrous dinner, I refused to swallow his lies any longer. My phone vibrated in my pocket, jolting me from my spiraling thoughts. Expecting Derek's name, a puzzled frown pulled my lips down when I saw the caller ID. My mother was the one person more enamored of Derek than I once was, ruthlessly pushing me toward marriage. For her to call was highly unusual. I slid my thumb across the screen, lifting the phone to my ear. "Leanna, thank God you answered." Her shrill voice was devoid of any warmth or affection. Before I could reply, she ranted on. "How could you embarrass Derek like that in front of his family? And then make a dramatic scene by leaving early? Have you lost all sense of propriety?" I blinked hard against the sting of tears. Of course she would take Derek's side, even over her own daughters. I drew in a long breath. Perhaps if either of you bothered to include me in family events, I might know how to behave properly. Bitterness roughened my words. Or was I supposed to intuit the expectations telepathically? A contemptuous sniff rattled through the line. There are no expectations for absent wives too self-absorbed in their own little worlds to support their hard-working husbands. She paused, then continued in a vicious tone meant to demean. Then again, Derek deserved better. A woman not so lacking in beauty or talent. Her criticism pierced my fragile confidence with the precision of an arrow, threatening emotional hemorrhaging. Gasping raggedly, I stabbed at the red circle on screen, ending the call before she could further shred my self-worth. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall. How dare she attack me when I was the injured party? Derek's deceit apparently spread beyond ruining my reputation with his family. He had turned my own mother against me. Red-hot fury kindled in my gut, the flames fueled by pain and betrayal. If Derek insisted upon war, then I would not hesitate to scorch the earth to root him out. I swiped angrily at my eyes. No more tears, no more weakness. I needed to know exactly what Derek plotted in the dark shadows. Time to hunt down an informant capable of illuminating his lies. I scrutinized the business card clutched in my sweaty palm, memorizing the embossed lettering. George McNamara, private investigator. My last resort gleamed like a beacon of hope in the murky confusion my life had become. With courage fueled by desperation, I pushed through the nondescript door into McNamara's office. The space matched my expectations. Dimly lit, dusty Venetian blinds half drawn, filing cabinet in the corner. Behind a battle-scarred desk sat a bear of a man, his keen azure eyes belying his otherwise rumpled appearance. McNamara studied me, bushy salt-and-pepper eyebrows raised. "Mrs. Dalton, I presume?" His gravelly voice reminded me of worn truck tires rolling over gravel. I nodded, perching on the edge of the visitor's chair. My words tumbled out in a rush as I detailed my suspicions, ending with a plea. "I know he's hiding something, but I can't prove it. Please, you have to help me find the truth." The private eye leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin as he listened intently, his piercing gaze cataloging everything from my strained tone to my disheveled appearance. I squirmed under his scrutiny, painfully aware of how I must look with lank hair, yesterday's smudged makeup, and the same yoga pants and baggy sweater I'd worn for 3 days now. Hardly the image of a successful businessman's wife. Finally, McNamara leaned forward, his expression deadly serious. "I'll take the case, but brace yourself. The truth isn't always pretty." Relief loosened the tight coils of anxiety in my chest. I just need to know one way or another. The not knowing is eating me alive. I meant that literally, as I couldn't remember the last time I managed to choke down more than a few bites of food or a few fitful hours of nightmare-plagued sleep. This had to end. McNamara promised daily updates as he launched immediately into his investigation. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in ages, as if fresh air finally circulated in my oppressed lungs. The sensation lasted mere hours, popped like an iridescent soap bubble by my trilling cell phone. Caller ID announced the impending pinprick. Calvin Dalton. Wonderful. Leanna Ellen Dalton, my father-in-law thundered without preamble. How dare you smear Derek's good name with your family by spreading such atrocious lies? He is the most devoted, hard-working husband a woman could dream of having. That you fail to adequately support him is your deficiency, not his. Calvin ranted on as I sat stunned, his accusations striking me like physical blows. At last, the initial shock wore off, replaced by smoldering anger and a deep sense of betrayal. Derek continued spinning his web of lies, further undermining me with my own family. This time he had gone too far. I would not let him impugn my character, so my reputation lay in tatters while he played the martyr. "That is enough," I shouted into the phone, startling Calvin to silence. "The only one spreading lies is your precious son. Do not call me again with your misguided vitriol, because I will not listen to another word against my good name." I violently stabbed at the red icon on my phone screen, ending the call with a defiant jab. Blood roared in my ears and my breath came in ragged pants, fury simmering my blood. Derek insisted on playing dirty by ruining my family relationships? Fine. Then it was past time I fight back on his level. No more cowering in corners for me. I strode up the walkway lined with precisely trimmed box hedges to the sprawling Dalton family mansion, chin lifted with moxie mostly feigned. Time to face the lion's den. When Calvin phoned yesterday, insisting my presence was mandatory at some family milestone for Derek's sister Diana, I knew it for the ambush it was. Another opportunity for the Daltons to barrage me with condemnation for daring to sully their golden child's good reputation. Well, I refused to be the only target remaining in this vicious battle. Tonight, their famed perfect family dynamic would finally crack and splinter under the weight of truth too long suppressed. I just prayed my backbone would hold steady under their inevitable vitriol. Squaring my shoulders as if preparing for battle, I pressed the ornate doorbell. Calvin himself flung open the immense oak door, his usual genial smile replaced by a patronizing smirk. "Leanna, so glad you could join us tonight." The sarcasm dripped from each word like venom. "Right this way." He ushered me not into the house's soaring foyer but along the covered porch toward the rear veranda. Curious family members peered through curtained windows as we passed. My cheeks flamed, but I refused to show any weakness, spine rigid, and gaze focused straight ahead. We stepped through wide French doors onto the expansive flagstone patio swarmed with Dalton relatives under twinkle lights, like fireflies winking merrily in counterpoint to the building tension crackling through the space. Calvin guided me to the outdoor living area beside a massive stone fireplace where Derek perched on a leather sofa, every inch the conquering hero. "Leanna decided to grace us with her presence after all," Calvin proclaimed loudly with hand gestures as if presenting a zoo animal. "Shall we allow her a chance to defend her reprehensible behavior?" A tight smile stretched my lips, though fury blazed in my eyes. So that was their play then. Fine by me. I cleared my throat delicately, then launched into my counterattack. "Actually, Calvin, I believe it is your son who owes everyone here an explanation." Gasps rippled through the crowd, but I pressed on recklessly. "The only behavior I'm guilty of is being foolish enough to trust a man apparently devoid of integrity." Murmurs rose as all eyes pivoted to Derek, still lounging arrogantly on the couch, one ankle propped casually atop the opposite knee. Though tension bracketed his mouth, he appeared nonplussed. "And pray tell, what lapse in integrity have I displayed?" Derek snapped caustically. "Working hard to support my wife so she may spend her days lunching and shopping to her heart's content?" Anger flared. Did he truly fail to comprehend the depth of his betrayal? I trembled with suppressed rage. "Do not attempt to twist facts with your distorted view of reality." My voice rang clearly in the sudden silence. "You know precisely what I reference. The days and nights you claimed were filled with important meetings while you deliberately concealed your true activities." I paused, pinning him with an unrelenting stare. "Who exactly have you been frequenting that condo on Park Avenue with Derek, and why have you purposefully hidden the truth from me?" The assembled family members inhaled their shock in unison. Eyes widened, shifted back to Derek. After an extended tense moment, my mother-in-law Millie broke the ringing quiet. "Well, how about a nice family picture?" Her falsely bright tone belied the panic in her eyes as the family illusion of perfection rapidly unraveled at the seams. I slid behind the wheel of my slate-gray Acura, pulse thrumming with exhilaration. Confronting Derek and his family's blindness to his faults filled me with crackling energy despite the sting of burns from their acidic contempt. However, my bravado shriveled when faced with the monumental task still ahead, proving Derek's infidelity. I twisted the key in the ignition, Time to do some detective work of my own. Pulling from the driveway, I headed toward Derek's sleek downtown office building, making good time in the sparse Sunday evening traffic. I eased into a spot in the shadowed parking garage, killing the lights but leaving the engine idling. Now to see if my wayward husband planned on logging weekend overtime tonight as well. I didn't have long to wait before a cherry-red Jaguar roared up to the executive parking section in the corner. I straightened in my seat, straining to confirm the driver's identity in the intermittent fluorescent lighting. Please let instincts be correct just this once. Then the interior flared to life as he opened the door and leaned in to gather his briefcase. Jackpot! My pulse leapt as Derek's handsome face was briefly illuminated. I watched him breeze inside, without glancing around like a man with a clear purpose. Where could he possibly be going this late on a Sunday? The offices stood dark and deserted on weekends, except perhaps for a clandestine rendezvous with that mystery woman I guessed awaited somewhere within. Drumming my fingers impatiently on the steering wheel, I weighed options: confront Derek directly and risk him slipping away, or trail him covertly to uncover the sordid truth. Given his talent for manipulation, I decided surveillance was my smartest, if not exactly noblest, choice. If I approached without concrete proof, he would undoubtedly twist scenarios and cast doubts until ending up the aggrieved innocent. Well, not this time, buddy. I cranked my engine and crept from the garage, catching sight of Derek's Jag pulling smoothly into traffic. Keeping a few vehicles between us, I shadowed him to an upscale condo tower 10 minutes away. Of course, the infamous Park Avenue property I had confronted him about just yesterday. At least now I knew for certain his denial was yet another bald-faced lie woven with practiced ease. No innocent reason existed for Derek to frequent an expensive condo clearly intended for clandestine affairs. I watched him swagger inside without a backwards glance. The private investigator I hired earlier this week likely knew all the specifics: who owned the property, how often Derek visited, and most importantly, who he met there. I just had to be patient and maintain surveillance until I received the PI's condemning report. Still, curiosity needled me. Who was worth risking his marriage and reputation over? Did Derek sneak off for secret romantic trysts with his assistant, a stranger from a seedy website for married affairs? Bile burned the back of my throat. Whoever she was, one thing seemed certain: this likely wasn't her first tango with a married man. Clearly an experienced predator. For now, I had seen enough. Starting my car, I pointed it back toward the privacy of my own apartment where I could call McNamara. Surely, he already possessed evidence revealing the depth of Derek's tangled web of lies and betrayal. I only hoped revealing that treachery to his beloved family would finally splinter Derek's picture-perfect illusions into jagged shards too sharp to repair. My soon-to-be ex-husband was overdue for a brutal wake-up call. I strode purposely into the lavishly decorated ballroom, chin lifted with confidence I didn't entirely feel. Time for the main event, publicly exposing Derek's duplicity to his family's elite social circle. I paused in the double doorway, scanning the room until I spotted my target holding court in the center of a sycophantic knot of businessmen. Gotcha. Adjusting my new designer cocktail dress, I glided through the room straight toward Derek, smiling toothily. The wolf entering the den of lions. Disengaging from his group with a puzzled frown, Derek moved to intercept me. "Leanna, what are you doing here?" I blinked innocently, attending my husband's important event just as a supportive spouse should. Wariness crept into his expression as his mouth tightened. Clearly he suspected brewing trouble. Good instincts. We faced off silently in the middle of the ornate room, tension charging the atmosphere like gathering thunderclouds. I relished stretching this moment, making Derek squirm. "Is that why you're wearing a sexy new dress and your hair styled?" He made an effort to keep his tone neutral, but his darting eyes betrayed unease. "Of course. I'm playing the glamorous wife tonight since your little mistress couldn't attend." My smile turned razor sharp. Gotcha. Derek actually paled beneath his artfully stubbled beard. "Leanna, I don't know what nonsense you're spewing now, but clearly you're confused. Oh, let's dispense with the lies for once." My voice rang out clearly in the sudden hush radiating through the room as all eyes pivoted toward us, standing in the center of the ornate space. I welcomed the rapt audience for Derek's imminent humiliation. Pulling a plain manila envelope from my small clutch with a dramatic flourish, I withdrew an 8x10 photograph capturing Derek in a passionate embrace with a gorgeous brunette, locked in a deep kiss as they entered an apartment building. His extravagant condo. This looks like all the proof anyone needs of your flagrant infidelity. I held up the incriminating evidence with a flourish as horrified gasps echoed. Derek lunged unsuccessfully to grab the photo. Gotcha again. Derek visibly crumbled before my eyes, impressive facade eroding. Gone was the urbane businessman's schmoozing associates, leaving a pathetically crushed man in an overpriced suit. Calvin shoved through the stunned onlookers, bravado weakened by distress. Son, this can't possibly be true. Explain yourself. Behind him, Derek's mother Millie dissolved into tearful hysterics, supported by her best friend Lorraine. Derek just stood mute, shoulders slumped and eyes clouded with despair. In that moment, he resembled a lost little boy more than a captain of industry. I recognized divorce's costly price, stamped raw across his face, his family standing in tattered ruins alongside our destroyed marriage. Get out! Calvin thundered, face mottled purple with rage as he pointed a rigid finger toward the exit. Don't expect sympathy or support from any of us after this ultimate betrayal. Derek cringed, nodding sadly before stumbling away on legs noticeably unsteady. The room unleashed a chaotic maelstrom of accusatory voices and racking sobs. I held myself tall amongst the debris, finally vindicated. My husband's spectacle of lies had collapsed like the House of Usher under the weight of truth. Now to see if its destruction freed me to rebuild my own life atop the rubble. I eased my sleek sedan against the curb half a block down from the imposing Dalton family manor, eyeing the flurry of activity outside the impressive home. The day after my nuclear detonation of Derek's established world order at the gala, and still the fallout continued. My lips quirked. Several days of relentless phone calls to the family matriarch finally resulted in this meeting with Millie. Time to find out whether the scales had fallen from her eyes yet regarding her fraudulent son's battered halo. My odds looked hopeful, judging by the catering vans and carpet cleaners steadily arriving, clearly preparing for my prodigal return to the family fold. I rummaged in my designer purse until fingers closed around cool metal. Extracting a heavy brass key, I rubbed my thumb across the ornate D embossed on the bow. The key to the kingdom, well, at least access to the Dalton family lair. A peace offering presented years ago by Millie herself when I first married her precious only son. Welcome to the family, sweetheart, she had exclaimed while pressing the weighty token into my palm. Then she pulled me into a warm, jasmine-scented hug that felt like coming home. I clung to that tender gesture now like a talisman, hoping enough maternal love lingered to bridge chasms torn wide by betrayal. After one last steadying breath, I slipped from the safety of my vehicle and clicked steadily up the paved walkway in my highest confidence-boosting heels. Time to face the lion's den. I pressed the brass key home, then eased the towering oak door open. Millie? I called tentatively. It's Leanna. A slender blonde whirlwind exploded from a side parlor, fielding me in a ferocious embrace redolent in Chanel No. 5. Leanna, my beautiful girl, Millie chirped brightly. We have so much catching up to do. Over steaming mugs of Earl Grey poured from heirloom china, whole stories spilled out in a cathartic rush. Of Derek's chronic detachment from his wife, the insidious isolation as he deliberately estranged me from family, his pathological lies spinning fictions until no truth remained. I knew something lurked beneath the surface, but I never imagined betrayal this cruel. Millie's weary eyes swam with fresh tears even now. My own child capable of such calculated deception, and toward those he supposedly loved. I reached across the polished mahogany table to grasp her graceful hands in mine. Derek alone owns responsibility for trading real relationships for superficial gain. I gentled my voice, adding with soft fervency, but you and I finding understanding today that finally feels like hope rising from the ashes. A watery yet true smile graced Millie's lips for the first time since I arrived. Oh, Leanna, of course I still love you like a daughter. We women must stick together now to heal these wounds. Sudden resolve hardened her delicate jawline, starting by cutting off Derek and his harlots completely. I blinked in surprise. Does this mean? Millie nodded vehemently. You were right confronting Derek's cheating publicly at the gala. His betrayal can't be concealed and forgiven. I should know. She broke off suddenly, waving one manicured hand as if swatting the past aside. Regardless, there must be consequences for such deception. I probed cautiously. Like withdrawing financial support so he can't continue living the high life with his mistress? A ruthless glint sparked in Millie's eyes. Exactly. Let the flashy leech pay his own bills for a change instead of tapping our accounts. Without money to burn, his bedazzled bimbo won't stick around anyway. She shrugged delicately. Serves him right for upending our entire family with his lies. For the first time since confronting Derek, bright hope pierced my heart. His own mother finally grasped the scope of his cruelty and now aligned firmly by my side. Together we would ensure Derek never destroyed an innocent woman again. Justice would be done. I rolled over with a luxuriant stretch, sunbeams tickling my face filtered softly through gauzy curtains. A glance at the clock confirmed I had indulged in a delightfully decadent mid-morning lie-in, without any obligations dragging me from the cozy nest of down-stuffed comforters. I could definitely become accustomed to leisurely mornings like this. Swinging my legs out of bed, I padded across artfully weathered hardwood floors and thick Turkish rugs to fling wide the curtains framing glass doors overlooking downtown. Beautiful morning sunshine glinted off skyscraper windows outside my panoramic penthouse view. I sighed happily. This new condo was everything my old place had not been. Bright, airy, and filled with possibility, just like this next chapter of my life. A knock interrupted my contented musings. I tugged a satin robe over my camisole pajamas and hurried to greet my guest. Swinging the door wide, I welcomed the aromas of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries. Good morning, gorgeous. Millie bustled in, bearing breakfast. I thought we could celebrate over this lovely spread from that French patisserie you adore. Soon we relaxed together on the balcony, fueling girl talk with lattes and croissants while cawing seagulls wheeled over the skyline. I confessed the truth, I could barely acknowledge myself these past painful years. I knew in my core something was wrong almost from the beginning, I admitted quietly, eyes downcast. I felt Derek's emotional distance even during our honeymoon. Millie squeezed my hand supportively. Yet you persevered because you're resilient and caring by nature. Her tone turned fierce. But my son didn't deserve your beautiful spirit. He's proven completely unworthy. I brushed crumbs off my hands, appetite fading. If only I had trusted my instincts instead of making excuses. Darling, stop punishing yourself. Hindsight brings clarity about red flags, but the present grants opportunity. Millie took my hands firmly, compelling my gaze to hers, glowing with conviction. Now you're free to seek someone who truly cherishes you. I offered a tremulous smile, encouraged by her staunch validation. My phone chirped brightly. Glancing at the screen, my pulse quickened, seeing my lawyer's name. I answered immediately. Leanna Dalton speaking? Yes? Millie watched closely as I began grinning wildly. That's wonderful news. Thank you for all your dedicated hard work securing this outcome. I disconnected the call and victoriously pumped both fists overhead. My divorce is finalized at last. The judge approved my request given Derek's infidelity, and I drew out the dramatic moment. I received 75% of all marital assets. Millie cheered loudly, grabbing my hands as we danced an impromptu jig. Hallelujah! That philandering snake got his financial comeuppance, and you, my resourceful dear, are awarded means to make a fresh start on your own terms. I threw my arms around Millie, hugging her tightly with joyful abandon. Despite heartbreak and bitter struggles, I had reclaimed independence and self-respect by ultimately trusting my inner wisdom. Never again would any man devalue my worth or make me question my sanity. From now on, I shone as brightly as the blazing sunrise, lighting my path to a beautiful life of my own design. The future unfurled, filled with radiant possibility and hope.